Well, if you haven't heard yet, the Alberta government has put us into phase one of the relaunch from COVID-19, opening the door for churches to move from having basically no ability to meet to having up to 50 people socially distanced with masks, no singing, and a couple of other restrictions as well. And while some churches, and I'd say most, are hesitating in this phase to open up, as it's probably not realistic, at least in the beginning here, to do a quality worship experience or what we would deem as valuable, and are continuing to stick online. There are questions coming out as to what youth groups should do, because they're generally a little bit smaller and they might be able to be a little more creative than what a Sunday service would be. And I wanted to throw a couple of questions your way to you as a youth leader, a youth pastor, or as a whole staff before you open your youth ministry, to ask yourself these questions and work through them. These questions are designed to help you to do a self-analysis as to whether or not it is worth doing it at this time. First question you need to ask yourself is probably the most important one, and it's weighing out risks and rewards in regards to safety. Obviously, we're not in a place where if you walk outside, you're going to catch this pandemic, this flu, this COVID-19, but it is still a reality that if you could get one or two cases happening in your youth group or your church, you could be in the news as the outbreak point of a new pandemic, which is not a PR move that any of us want to see happen. So the question is to weigh out the risks of the positives of a restricted youth meeting over the medical concerns and the potential PR disaster that is on the other side of the realities of this pandemic. Is what you're going to get out of youth happening on a smaller level worth the dangers that exist? What youth really like when they come to a youth group is a safe space to hang out, usually some food and community, along with an experience with Jesus. Most of these things are going to be extremely difficult to facilitate in the settings that are going to be legally restricted away from you, even now in phase one as a youth group. You have to be wearing a mask, you have to be 6 feet apart, there's no high fives, there's no hanging out, there's nothing casual about it. Anything that would have been comfortable and enjoyable before is likely gone. There's going to be a sense of anxiety, there's going to be people wearing masks literally everywhere. You can't really play games, you can't share a ball, you can't hit the same volleyball because that's going to spread germs. There's no way that that's okay. So you're really limited in what you can do. So let me ask you this question. What am I gaining on an in-person interaction that I can't currently get online, at least in this version of what in-person is? Obviously, if we could go back to the way it was in February, it'd be a no-brainer. But are you actually gaining more connection? Are you actually having more games to play available to you? The fact is, when someone asked me what I would suggest is a good game for students to play if they were 6 feet apart in a room, it's a Jackbox game. It's the same thing that you're going to be doing online. You're just using a shared screen and you can kind of visibly see each other even though you're in the distance, which when you break it down sounds a lot like an online interaction anyways. But the difference in an online interaction is that it's a little bit more user-friendly. It's way less overhead and less work to set up. And there's no safety concerns that could fall back on your church. The third question I want to ask you is, why are you in such a rush to get back to these restricted versions of youth ministry? Obviously, we'd be happy if we could go back to what life used to be 4 months ago tomorrow. But my greatest fear is this, that we would forget all the lessons we've learned along the way, that we would not realize the cool tools and the amazing tools that God has given us and shown us through this pandemic of online interaction, whether it's Zoom or House Party or YouTube, and we just go back to our old habits. The fact is, our old habits were comfortable. We knew how to do them. We liked them. But the also sad facts about them is that they were not moving the needle. They were leading to a declining and plateaued church in Canada, and it wasn't good enough. So if your plan is to go back to the way things used to be, your plan is to fail. We need to look at these new things that we have available to us. And as we have the old way of life available and all the positives that come from that, and as we embrace those, we need to make sure that we're supplementing and bringing in those other elements that we've learned in the last little bit. And those are the tools that are going to help us to grow, to reach lost people, to disciple better, and to see the church in Canada be relevant like it hasn't been in 100 years. This is our opportunity. Don't be so quick to go back to what you used to know that you miss what God has for you today.